Hi everyone, it's Ben Thompson here. Happy to kick off today's webinar, and I hope you're having a good day. If you're like me, you'll be wearing a hat because my hair is completely out of control after months of COVID, so excuse the cap. Today we're going to spend some time with two exceptional people, Jody Geddes and Kate Pollard from Circle In. Before I introduce them, I just want to provide some context as to why I'm so excited about today's webinar. As a working parent myself, I'm very lucky to have a very supportive partner, my wife, who helps us to. Sorry, I'm just seeing a comment there that somebody can't hear everything. Can you guys, Kate, Jody, can you hear me fine?
We can hear.
You.
Okay, great. All right. That's good. Okay, so yeah, I'm very lucky to have a supportive partner who helps balance the workload and certainly takes a lot of the load off me so I can focus more on business. I know that I'm incredibly lucky in that how our family is structured, and that that's not the norm. Most people are juggling both work and children simultaneously. And Kate and Jody have obviously spent a lot of time both as working mothers with children and supportive parents, and they've turned it into a business called Circle In, which I'll get them to explain in a moment. I guess more broadly, when COVID arrived and we all had to go and work remotely, it took me a couple of months to get my head around where the world was going, how it was going to be, and then all of our team will know I got very excited for a couple of months there about remote work and went very deep into the opportunities that I believe that it offers, the inclusiveness for people from regional areas to be able to participate in the wider economy, for carers with people at home who they are caring for to be able to work part-time or full-time while still caring for a relative or loved one. And for parents to participate more fully in the workforce, not having to commute. So I got very excited about it. But I think as the months went on and we all had to deal with the lockdowns and juggling parenting and work, we realized that it's certainly not easy, and that it is likely to be a part of society going forward. And that if we're going to do it and do it well, we have to be very focused, and we have to be very mindful of making sure that we understand how to do it well. So today's webinar is all about understanding those things, how to do it well, what the considerations are, and to learn from two experts that have not only practiced this, but as I said, they've turned it into a business, and they've turned it into a business that's gone global and is working with some of the biggest employers on the planet. So today I'm humbled to be sitting here to learn like the rest of us, like the rest of you on the webinar. I'm really excited to welcome Jody and Kate and to have the opportunity to learn from both of you. So welcome to the panel.
Thanks, Ben. It's great to be here.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, so look, I'm really keen to hear your story. Maybe if I can just throw out a fairly open question. Can you provide some personal insights and share the experiences that you've had as working parents and before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and how it got you to where you are today with Circle In?
Yeah, for sure. So I might kick off, and I'm going to say that you might see some little ones because let's face it, we are homeschooling at the moment, and this is the reality of what we find ourselves in, but that's why we're here to talk about working parents. So by way of background, Kate and I both have 18 years corporate experience working for some of Australia's biggest organisations, and we actually met at the last company that I worked for, and Kate subsequently left and then went on to another place. But it really drew us together in terms of, having our first child together. Our kids are both 5 and 7 now, and it was through our own experience of going off on parental leave that led us to the idea. And those feelings of disconnection, out of sight, out of mind. And importantly, and one that we now strongly believe in and we'll talk a lot about today, is the importance of your manager and the role they play through your journey. I think what's really highlighted, through, building the company is it's not just going off on parental leave that your manager plays a key role. It's at every stage, as an employee on your journey. So when we returned to work, and specifically if I'm talking about my own experience, I experienced those feelings of, lack of confidence. And as a result, my productivity dropped. And the reality is there's a real business cost there. So we set out to understand if it was just us feeling this way or everybody else. And we surveyed over 1,000 working parents, and it was unanimous. 76% believe their company should be doing more to support them through parental leave. So just over 3 years ago now, we launched the company. And as you said, Ben, really proud to say that we've gone global and we now support over 55 companies and the most progressive. And Kate, I might hand to you for some of your experiences and the things that I know you're very passionate about and what you believe in.
Yeah. So, it was an interesting experience. And I think it was a bit of a humbling kind of experience, I guess, going on parental leave. And I guess the thing is, we were pretty naive, both Jodie and I, the first time we actually went on parental leave. So, and what really, as Jodie said, brought us together was the fact that we were going through this experience at the same time. So, and this often happens in a lot of workplaces. You have the big farewell, the cupcakes, and, this is obviously pre-pandemic. But it was really not until we went back to work that we both really felt I guess we lost our confidence. We were sort of fumbling around. We're trying to negotiate, working flexibly. It felt like we were kind of almost demoted in the workplace in that sort of sense, that we'd been out of sight, out of mind. We'd missed what had been happening while we were away. And it was all of those sort of things that just really resulted in us having probably a less than desirable experience. But it's not like we weren't working for companies that had great parental leave policies or things like that. So what became really apparent to Jodie and I think, was the actual practical support that is required to help support parents, particularly when they're going through these key transition points in their life. And let's face it, there's so many people who have kids. This is not an usual thing that happens. So why isn't it that workplaces couldn't have better support in place for, parents such as Jodie and I? It's interesting. So our kids are now 5 and 7. I've got 2 boys and Jodie's got 2 girls. And we often joke that, maybe they might get married one day because they are good little mates as well. Anyway, so we're sort of, really going through all of those different stages of being parents. My particular experience when I returned to work was, and this was with my second child, is that my manager had actually moved overseas for basically a 6-month secondment. So I returned to work and I was like, what is my role? What am I coming back to? And I actually had no clarity around my role and things like that. So that was particularly not great, but probably because I'd been through it before and I had a good network where I was working. But those sort of things can, they're things that we don't really think about much, but at an individual level, they can be quite stressful and can really destabilize you, I guess, in terms of your career momentum and things like that. So yeah, that's a little bit about our experiences. And I'm sure there's lots of people who are nodding, saying, yes, that's happened to me, or I know that that's someone this has happened to. So I guess why we started Circling was for those reasons.
Great. So, I mean, yeah, so you've felt firsthand that there was a better way to manage working parents and the return to work. Mm-hmm. So tell me, how did that turn into Circle In, and now how does Circle In solve that problem?
Yeah, so essentially when we started the company, we were very much focused on kind of what we call that 2-year period, expecting a baby, on leave and just back at work. And that was our primary focus. We're really fortunate that we launched with Medibank, who were our founding partner. And very quickly, as we started to grow the business and talk to our customers, we realized actually the biggest need is with everyday working parents. Now, who would have thought that 3 years later we'd be in this pandemic? And it's actually, you're right, working parents that are facing the biggest challenge and need the right support. So in a lot of ways, our program's never been more relevant than it is right now. So really what we're here to do is provide that support system for organisations to provide better support to their working parents and caregivers. We know that policy is one thing, but in order to have the right support system, you then need to have the support in place to really to really bring that policy to life. So we deliver that through an online digital platform that's branded and provides the resources, support, inspiration, and advice for everyday working parents as they move through the various journey phases, as well as more broadly managers. You'll hear us talk a lot about managers and the role they play. And at the end of the day, if you have a supportive manager who's showing empathy and leadership, you're going to have happier employees and more effective working parents. So as I said, we work globally now. We've built the tech platform to be able to scale and provide, local experiences, because the other challenge we face, and the reality is that legislation differs country by country, as well as company policies. So often a lot of companies we work with, they'll have a parental leave policy that's applicable to Australia, a different one in Singapore, a different one in the US. So we're able to house it in one platform, but provide that local experience. We're really acting as a personal coach that's really there to handhold and guide their employees through the various stages. I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we are focused on that pregnancy stage, but in fact, 51% of our users are everyday working parents like Kate and I. In this pandemic, it's parents like us that need the most support, that are managing, the everyday juggle now of homeschooling and your career. So that's how we work with companies. And then I think what's exciting is that we're able to demonstrate impact and ROI, and that when you have the right support in place, you have happier, more productive and more engaged employees.
Yeah, and I guess access to more talent if you can do it well. And I think what
100%.
we're going to find over the next few months is that when this lockdown eventually ends, the next problem will be getting talent back into the workplace and retaining talent. Interestingly, we've done our own surveys now 2 years in a row during COVID to find out whether people are willing to go back to the office. And I haven't seen any question that has such great alignment and agreement across Australia, which is, I think, 95% of employees want to continue working in a flexible way. And I'm sure many of those are parents who have found a new way of juggling the work-life balance that they won't want to give up. They won't want to go back to 3 hours on the road commuting every day of the week. So right. It's going to be an interesting lesson in the return to work area. So, sorry.
I was just going to say, Ben, just on that, I think that, as hard as COVID and the pandemic has been, we're at this real fork in the road where we can actually choose a much more sustainable and better way of working. So I think it's a huge opportunity in front of us as well. So, once we get out of the nuts and bolts of lots of lockdowns and things like that, there's a huge opportunity for a new, more exciting, more supportive and sustainable, way of working, which is quite exciting. I think.
Absolutely. There's a better future and you guys are helping to design that. Yeah. So thank you. I only had one job to do, which was introduce you and sort of guide the conversation and mention that if you have questions, can you please put them into the Q&A box in the bottom right? I forgot to do that. So if you do, we'll come to those questions towards the end, or if there's any that are highly relevant to the topics we're talking about, we'll deal with them on the fly. But please add them in there. I might, actually, there's one question that sprang to mind. The name Circle In, can you tell me where that came from and how it's relevant to the business?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer this. There's probably two parts. I'll be honest, the domain name was available, which is always a funny one. But in all seriousness, we spent a lot of time talking about what was the right name for our organisation, and brand plays a huge role for Kate and I, and always has and always will. But really, it's that connection of building circles. And we, use the analogy of, your mother's group and how it's, your inner circle. How do we create parent circles in the workplace? So there's a lovely analogy there in terms of building those communities and bringing circles of like-minded people at various life stages together.
Great. No, that's excellent. Thank you. Okay, let's move into the next discussion point, which is understanding the myths around working parents, and maybe you can flesh out, what are the assumptions versus what's the reality for working parents, and what do you think? Why do you think those myths versus first assumptions and reality exist.
Yeah, I've got a great one. I think the first one that everyone, talks about is, oh, parents, they're not productive. You hear it's kind of like this thing, oh, they're going into that phase of their life, they're not going to be productive, they've got too many demands. Whereas, the pandemic has been this crazy experiment. And what we've seen is that people are juggling all sorts of things at home, like homeschooling, working remotely. And guess what? People are still getting work done. It's probably not sustainable in its current, way of working, but, it's amazing how people actually are still being productive. So I think that's a huge myth to bust. And I think there's been numerous studies which have actually shown parents are super focused. They get through the work, back in when we were in the workplace, they don't have time for the chit chat in the office. They're just like, okay, I've got to get out the door by, 4:30 or whatever it is to go pick up the kids. So I think, what comes with being a parent is people become laser focused and they're actually super effective. So I think that whole piece around, they are productive. I actually think if you can get through, looking after multiple kids, getting them to all their activities, making sure they're dropped off on time, picked up, like that multitasking aspect, being able to actually make that happen at home, it's not too dissimilar as the workplace. You've got lots of things, competing priorities. How do you make sure you're spending time in the right place? And I think because time becomes such a scarcity, parents are ridiculously focused and super productive. So yeah, I think that one's a good one to myth bust.
Yep.
I think the other one that I know Kate and I share a very firm view on this, and it's something that's kind of core to us at Circle In, is the fact that being a working parent and having a career are not mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. I think there's a myth out there that you can't have both, that you need to give up your career to be a parent. You can absolutely have both. You need to be working for the right organisation, and it's never been more important to work for a family-friendly organisation that supports you, which is why we do what we do. So that's probably one big myth. The other, and I'm just going to play a little video if that's okay, Ben.
Yeah, go for it.
This is actually a video, I'll just pause it, that went viral last year. I recorded this at home in the middle of our lockdown in Melbourne. This is 1 hour of a 8 or 9 hour workday as a working parent. And the reality is that you are constantly juggling kids. And I think for the majority of people watching this right now that are in lockdown, homeschooling, this has never been more real. So I shared this, I think it was up to 150,000 views or something on LinkedIn. It did go quite viral. But, it really brings to life what we're all faced with right now. I'm just hoping mine don't walk in as yours don't, Kate.
You can repeat it.
Sometimes I say that the best way to close a sales deal is bringing the kids at the end of the conversation. But it's reality. Also core to our brand is keeping things very real and very practical. This is what we're faced with. So again, we need to make sure that we're supporting working parents. We're showing empathy. We're giving them the tools so that they can thrive at work and at home and in this new crazy environment, especially when you're in the midst of lockdown.
Yeah, I guess that's a important distinction. You started the business 3 years ago, before COVID, and you saw and experienced firsthand what it was like to be working parents returning to the workforce, but in a pre-COVID period. Mm-hmm. And then you've got the period where we're in lockdown, schools are closed, you're literally surrounded by your children all day long. Are there important distinctions that people need to keep in mind between what the world was like and what it will go back to once schools reopen, and how working parents can better juggle the requirements?
I don't think we'll ever go back to how things were. I think it's changed the world forever and in a really good way. And I think, if we're to look at COVID in a positive way, I think for working parents, it's a great thing. It's fast track flexibility, 5 or 10 years. I say you only need to go to the school gate at 3:30 and see how many dads are there now doing school pickup. That's a great thing. We love seeing that the role of a carer at home now has completely changed and that it's becoming more equal. Whereas before it was primarily the female that, was carrying that load at home in terms of, the school drop-offs, pickups, and probably working more of a part-time schedule. So I don't think we'll go back. I think definitely we're going to see more and more people sharing that responsibility at home. I think, hopefully, well, at the moment, unfortunately, we're seeing more women than ever leave the workforce because they're having to choose between a career and homeschooling their own mental health. And you look at the numbers in the US, I think it's the worst it's been in years, Kate. Like it's, we talk about this a lot. So hopefully we'll come out of this period, and we, our goal is we want to get women back. We want to make sure that they're able to kind of manage this juggle and this new working world.
Yeah.
I think
okay. So sorry, Kate, go.
I was just going to say, I think the pandemic has sort of highlighted a lot of sort of structural things that are an issue in, workplace structures, and how much of the caring responsibilities have traditionally fallen on women. And then, it's gotten to the point now where there's a lot of women who've actually dropped out. So because of the competing demands, and it's just not sustainable. So hopefully when we sort of come out of this, in and out of lockdowns and, and we're in a much more sort of stable position, that we can maybe have a look at some of these structural issues that are in workplaces to be much more inclusive and help parents more get a balance between, the shared caring responsibilities, have a lesser impact, which has traditionally fallen on females in terms of, all the domestic duties and all of that side of it as well. So I think there's some really, it has probably highlighted a few issues, and I think there's some really great things that we probably as a society need to sort of face into and make sure that we don't, keep exacerbating those same problems.
Yeah. I think there's a series on the 7:30 report, and tonight they're covering the balance of unpaid labour in the household.
Exactly.
Between men and women. So that'll be an interesting one to watch. But let's just move on and start to think about the best tips for managing expectations and managing working parents. I think we've established now that I think two really important points. Number one, you don't need to choose between being a parent and having a career. You can blend both, and you're both great examples of that. And secondly, there is no any assumption that a working parent is going to be less productive is false. And I've seen that firsthand in business for 20 years. The most productive people I've ever employed are those super focused parents who are getting everything done more deliberately than many other people, because they have to. There's no choice in that. You don't get to stand around and talk all day. So let's now move to, well, how do you manage for that? What are how can leaders manage working parents so that everyone is aligned better?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good ways to go about this. One of the key things that comes up is around balancing flexibility and structure. So I think one thing that we've seen through the pandemic is how much parents have benefited from more flexible working, and particularly dads. We've surveyed dads, and probably another myth that's out there is around that it's a career killer for dads when they ask to take a long period of paid parental leave or work flexibly, where in actual fact what they've found is that they've really enjoyed obviously when the kids are being dropped off and things, and you're not all working under one roof and trying to homeschool, but dads have really enjoyed the fact that they haven't had to commute so much, and that they're getting to spend more time with their families and their kids. So I think one thing that's really important for workplaces is to support flexible working, because it really, really does benefit working parents, and it helps them juggle the things that are important in their life, like doing school drop-offs and pickups. This whole kind of mantra around the rigid 9 to 5 must be in the office kind of structure. I think we've moved past that, and hopefully COVID, the pandemic has actually proved that we can work flexibly en masse as well and still get a lot of work done. I think there's a lot of benefits, particularly for parents, around that. I would say though that it is important to have some structure. So I think the fear from workplaces is, okay, well, does that just mean that everyone can work however they want, whenever they want, when actual fact that's probably not sustainable either. You do need hours in the day where the team can collaborate together. So it's not going to work if someone's working the midnight shift and someone's working the day shift, as a general rule for the whole team, because you do need those hours of crossover when you can collaborate together. So I think having some principles in place around how you work flexibly, I think is probably where you need to get to, rather than strict rules of you need to be here 9 to 5 in the office. I think that model is kind of, hopefully gone for most companies. So some of the things that we've employed at Circle In around those flexible working principles, I think they really help strike the right balance. I can give you a feel for some of the ones that we have as flexible principles, because they might be relevant to people listening in, but here's a handful of them. Flexibility is everyone's opportunity and responsibility. Flexibility drives agility. We focus on results. We remain connected. We have freedom and with healthy boundaries, and we start from a position of trust. So I think that's, a really important philosophy. And I think these principles give people a framework within to work within, without being, you need to, work exactly like this, and that's got to work for you because that's going to work for everyone else. Because I think there needs to be that flexibility for parents. So
I think, Kate, I loved how you shared our flexibility kind of practices, but Kathleen has put something on the chat about, what support is most useful from a working parent's perspective, with flexibility arrangements. And I think two of the things that Kate just spoke about, trust and having an outcome-based culture. So trust is really important. So we're always reinforcing to our team, don't care when you're working, I know you're going to get the work done. Just building that into your language around, there's that sense of they believe that they're, we're empowering them, and there's a level of trust there. And I think the other piece is it's outcome focused. And the fact that, we often say to our team, if you get all your work done and you've smashed your targets, finish at 10 o'clock on a Friday. Don't care. There's a real level now of openness in our team of, oh guys, I'm offline this afternoon, I'm juggling the kids, but I'll be back on later to get my work done, and just really working together. So I think, just in answer to Kathleen there, probably I think outcome and building a culture of trust.
I do think you have, you do need some sorts of guidelines, I guess, around
Definitely.
times when you do come together as a team. Like, what are those common times when you have your team meetings, or you do come together and you have face-to-face time? I think that what we've seen from all of the surveys of people, how they want to work in this new working world, is that they'd like to work from home quite a bit, but most people would like to come into the office or into the workplace 1 or 2 days a week, so that they can have that face-to-face as well, because we're all a bit zoomed out.
Yeah, there's just another question that's in the chat box, which I think is relevant to this right now, is from Talisa. How do you convince companies that still believe in the 9 to 5 work model? And I know I'd probably say the office-based model, and they're not open to flexibility and working from home. Have you had to deal?
Yes.
Maybe she should show them my video.
Yeah. No,
I think some of those people would look at that video and say,
you can't work at home.
If that's what I get from you, then come into the office, because I know I'm going to get your full attention. But I think we've had conversations previously where I've got some friends who are, senior executives in companies, and they're like, no, I need to know what my staff are doing. I need to see them.
Yeah.
And I say, you need to rethink your systems. You need to think about how to get the best out of people. It's not by staring at them all day long.
Yeah, exactly. I think my advice to people who are not getting that support, or there's that lack of trust around working flexibly, is you've almost got to put it in a way that you can trial it. So the facts are that everyone has the right to request flexible working, and the onus is, it's very hard for businesses to legally refuse, the opportunity to work flexibly. So I think that's one thing. So the other part to that is, as well, is if you have someone who's a bit old school and, really likes that FaceTime, why don't you, suggest a 3-month trial? And, you can actually say, look, I'll prove to you, this is how I'm going to work. It is important that we meet the needs of the business as well. So this is how I'm going to meet the needs of the business. But I'd like to trial this for 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, we can revisit it. And if there's still an issue, then we can work through that. So it's almost like, how do you kind of put it in a way that will enable you to kind of really trial it and then prove that it actually does work, and build that trust piece, I guess, that might be the issue that your employer or your manager is trying to overcome.
Yeah,
there's a question in the chat, Ben, about customers still expect to be able to phone or email during set hours. And I totally get that. But again, it's just thinking differently about the way we work, and can you actually schedule people at different times? So, talking to your team openly and realizing actually, someone said that they get up at 6 a.m. to do their work. So knowing who likes to work early, can they man the phones versus others? So it's really rethinking the way the team works, as opposed to the traditional, everyone is on in front of their computer 9 till 5.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great example. I mean, the fact that customers expect to be able to speak to somebody between 9 and 5 is a legacy of the 9 and 5 culture.
Yeah.
Imagine if you say to your customers, oh, we're extending our phone support from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. because we have people who will be available around, all of those hours. Tell us when we can contact you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
And by the way, we're a flexible working parents, supportive business, and we attract better talent. There's ways to do it. I think the other one that we've seen, because we've been covering remote work as a theme for many months now, is that trust has to, there has to be the trust, but you can't have the trust unless you have the structure to track performance. So there's a lot of companies that have so much change management to do whether it's OKRs or KPIs or that outcomes focused approach, that has to be embedded into a business. It takes time, it takes change management, but it's a precondition to allowing for that trust and flexibility. So we've really got to help businesses adopt the best management models, and that just takes some time.
Yeah, and I think the thing is, like, it's not as I was saying before, it's not a just work whenever you want, however you want kind of situation. You need to be having a conversation with the people in your team. How do you want to work? Setting clear expectations, being really clear on what needs to be delivered by when. And then it's almost a case of, well, get out of the way and let people work out how they then deliver the work. So being clear on what it is you want as an output, but then letting people deliver it, and giving them more control and flexibility about how and when they will deliver it. But again, you're right, that comes down to a bit of trust as well. You sort of have to let go as a manager if you're a bit worried about something like that, and just trial it. But I think you'll be surprised. It's amazing when you give people that trust, and you give them that control and you empower them. That will actually pay dividends in terms of how happy your people are feeling, and they're more likely to stay with you. That's the bottom line. People don't want to be micromanaged or told, you've got to fit it in like this. Like, let people be a bit more in control of how they want to work, and empower them, I think is a great outcome.
Yeah.
And Fiona's just said, and I really like this question. She said, as the CEO of a medium-sized organisation, I'm getting emails from staff expecting answers from 5 a.m. to 10 p.m. because everyone's working flexibly. And I think the thing I'd say to you, Fiona, is it's about setting expectations with your team and being really clear around what are those core working hours and how do you want your team to work. So one of the things that Kate and I have introduced of late is we're always online late. That's the reality. We, run a big company and we work in crazy hours, but we now don't schedule, we don't send anything at night. We schedule everything to be sent at 8 o'clock the next morning. So Slack messages, emails, because we don't want this culture of people feeling like they need to respond. So again, we've had that conversation with our team to set really clear expectations. So I think, to Fiona, be really transparent with your team about what you want them to do. Because if you keep going down that path very quickly, people will feel like they need to respond all the time. And that's not a good environment, especially, for parents and so forth.
Yeah. I mean, that's also a great example of where a new skill, like, again, COVID's hit the world and we've all had to adapt, but we haven't had time to learn the skills that are necessary to operate well in this environment. So
Completely.
if you've been following the the thread in around Employment Hero and remote working, there's a thing called asynchronous communication, which is not expecting synchronous discussions to take place. If somebody emails you at 10 p.m, that's fine, provided they realize that you'll get back to them at the best time for you, which might be 6 a.m. the following morning, but you don't expect them to reply, at 7 a.m. They'll reply whenever they're ready. But it's just communicating what asynchronous means and how to make it work effectively. But it's an important skill set, and it takes time to develop. And I just think we haven't got there yet.
Yeah, I think the key to that is what you've highlighted is open communication, and it takes a while to master this and work. You're always tweaking it. So I think two-way regular communication is really important with your parents and your team as well. Understanding like this whole empathy piece is super important as well. Understanding what their day looks like, the challenges they're facing. And then, that ongoing regular communication, how's it working, on both sides, and then keep working on it to make it work,
Yeah. I think the role of managers is important. And when, just talking about empathy, then one of the things that we've actually worked into our platform is sending what we call micro learning moments. And these are little empathy nudges to send to managers to remind them of what to say and what to do to their working parents. Little things like, hey, start a conversation by asking a parent if they're okay. I think we know that leaders and managers are time poor. They want to do the right thing, but often they forget, the simple things that can have such an impact on the conversation. So we're not only nudging managers and leaders of those key moments, but we're also nudging them around showing, moments of empathy and the right support. So again, I don't think we can underestimate the role that leaders and managers play here, both from a culture perspective, setting expectations, and also supporting working parents.
That's a great segue into another question from Kat Truman, and also our fourth discussion point, which is, so Kat asked, can you please give us some clear, structured tips for parents who are struggling with managing homeschooling and being productive? And so I think it'd be great if we move into the tips and advice based on your experience and business. And then we will still have around 10 minutes for questions. I notice we've got at least 7 questions in the Q&A section. So please take your questions and throw them into the Q&A box. If you have put questions into the chat box and you want us to answer them, please move them across into the Q&A so that we can manage them more effectively. But let's jump into the tips and advice.
Yeah, so I mean we're in Melbourne, so we're in lockdown number 6, which is pretty, for anyone who's in Melbourne, we've had a fair time to kind of get used to. And I wouldn't say I would like to perfect the homeschooling, because I much prefer the kids are at school, but we've kind of been forced into it. And I feel this one in particular, this lockdown, is really dragging on, and it's kind of like, when's it going to end, sort of thing. But what we have learned, and this is a conversation at home ultimately around how do you structure it, how do you support each other. I have no idea how single parents do it. I'm very fortunate. I've got a great husband. And what we do is we literally split it 50-50 down the middle. So what we found didn't work was, just trying to do the homeschooling on the side while you're trying to work. You actually need one person to kind of be there to do more of the homeschooling, but that enables the other one of us to then have some uninterrupted work time. So it's never perfect, because there's things that come up that don't sort of fit into that sort of splitting it 50-50 down the middle. So you do have to be flexible, but we've really tried this time, and we're starting to get there, is just trying to best juggle it so that the kids have got either one of us that they can go to, because we've got little kids, they're in first year of school and second year of school, so they need a lot of help, and then that means that the other person can get some work done, and we sort of make up the difference at night time, catching up on what we've missed during the day, or things that need to get done. So that's really important, and it's really important from a couple of reasons. One, the kids don't get as upset. That's important. Trying to, I think above everything, you've got to make sure that your kids' well-being and is is okay, and that you can, they're happy. And when we were getting stressed, then the kids were getting stressed, and it was just a big, hot mess really of, unhappy people in the house. So that's how we've sort of dealt with it. And since we've been a lot calmer, the kids have been a lot calmer, and then everyone's sort of getting their stuff done. So that's how we practically manage it. That may not be a reality for everyone though, because my husband and I have a bit of flexibility in both our jobs to enable that to happen. But, that's sort of worked for us. Anyway, we have good days and bad days still though, that's for sure.
I think you're nailing it, Kate.
Yeah, I'm trying to be as positive as we can. But yeah, it's really important. I think the kids really pick up on how you're feeling. And so that's meant that I often, can't do as many meetings in the afternoon, for example, because I'm, doing more of the homeschooling. And the other thing is, I've got 2 boys and they need a lot of exercise. So we start off the day before they even get on their first call, go outside, run them around, then they're a lot better and a lot calmer. And then you do another one at the end of the day too. So that's also working, just giving them regular breaks. But yeah, there's no silver bullet, unfortunately.
I think the other thing is to manage expectations and not be afraid to talk to your manager, talk to your CEO, whoever it may be, and be really honest about where you're at and how you're feeling. And again, what your day looks like. If you've got a husband that's all of a sudden on calls all day and you're not going to be around as much, not being afraid to have that conversation. I think the other thing that's worked really well for us is identifying what we call our hotspots. So if you think about your day, there's always 1 or 2 times of the day. Kate spoke about the fact she needs to take the kids out in the morning. What are the things that do trigger, like, that craziness or that hot mess to arise, and how can you be on top of it? So for us, it's, that 7 to 8 a.m. period in the morning. And if we can both be present and set the girls up right for the day, it's a much better experience versus us, being on Zooms early or whatever it might be. So they're just a couple of little tips, I think, that have really helped us. There's no silver bullet. For me, I've got 2 girls, so they're out there dancing at the moment to Spotify. So that's been my savior.
The other thing, so that's our sort of personal level, but then there's in a workplace as well. So we've identified people are getting a lot of Zoom fatigue and things like that. And so we're very conscious about the wellness of our overall team. So we've had last Friday and this Friday, we're having, half day off, just giving people time to reconnect with their families and just have a rest, and that goes for parents and non-parents as well. People just need a bit of a break, and it's a bit of a marathon rather than a sprint at the moment. So we're just trying to look at better ways we can support the team. We've also
Zoom free Thursday.
And we've also introduced a day where we're Zoom free as well, just to give people a bit of a break from the constant, meeting after meeting kind of piece as well.
Great. Excellent. Any other tips before we move to question and answer?
Yeah, there's a few questions here about single parents. And it's really interesting. A really good friend of mine is a single mum, and actually had 2 hours with her on Friday night just talking about the juggle that she's currently facing. And I'm not going to lie, I think, my heart breaks for single parents right now, and I don't know how they're doing it with kids at home. And, she doesn't have the luxury of being able to be flexible with her job. So she's juggling 2 kids and a full-time job. So it is really hard. I guess my advice to her was, like I've said to everybody, just be honest with your manager. Can you reduce some hours? Although financially that might be challenging for some. So I think one of the things that we're trying to advocate for is like what support can be put in place for single parents, and how can we better support them?
I think you just need to, to your point, Jo, you just need to have like that honest conversation with your workplace and say, this is my reality at the moment.
Yep.
And you need, good workplaces will be empathetic. Your manager will be empathetic if they're a good leader. So I think
definitely
you just have to reduce down, your workload and know that it's a point in time. I think the thing you've got to prioritize in this situation is the overall well-being for your kids. So also having a conversation with the teacher and saying there's going to be days when we're just not going to get to all of the the work. And most teachers are like, when I've raised issues with my kids' teachers about, some days they just don't want to do it. They're having a bad day and they just don't want to do any of the work. The worst thing you can do is force them to do it because then they're going to hate it even more. So I think it's sometimes you just got to let it go, and you're not going to get it all done. I think that's okay. You can't, it's actually not possible to do everything really well at the moment.
That's great. I think we've got about 15 minutes, and we've got plenty of questions to get through. And I find once we start answering questions, more questions start to flow. So we might move into them. I think if I can kick off with one. Sorry about the background noise. If you mentioned earlier that every person has a right to request remote work. I guess the question I'm trying to get at is, if you're in a business and you don't have that flexibility, you can see that there's a trend to get people back to the office. What are your rights to lead from below and sort of help the organization embrace the benefits of remote working and flexibility?
Yeah, I think the onus is when there's a formal request process for requesting flexible work. It's part of the Fair Work Act. So, everyone has the right to request flexible working, and the onus is actually on businesses to, if they can't, they have to prove why you can't do it rather than the other way around. So the onus is on businesses to support flexible working, particularly for parents. So that's the first point. So you're coming from a position of, well, how can I make this work? How do I make it stack up for my workplace? But I think the important thing as a parent who wants to negotiate flexible working is approaching it from, putting yourselves in the shoes of your manager or the business and what needs to be delivered, and then working on how do you allay those fears, or how can you overcome those by supporting the needs of the business as well. So I think that's you've got to, it shouldn't be a one-way street. It's got to work for both parties. And I think that's where you've got to come at flexible working. The other thing is there's lots of different types of flexible working as well, like compressed week, part-time, so there's not just one type of flexible working. So there's lots of different ways to think about flexible working as well. So being clear on what you would like that to look like, and how you can also in your role support the needs of the business and what needs to get done.
Yeah. Sorry, and just a follow-up question to that. I know I'm dominating the questions already, but are you saying that the right to request flexible work exists in all the countries where Circle-In is operating, or is Australia ahead or behind on this front?
Yeah, there's definitely a difference. I should specify that this is in Australia. So yeah, and it definitely depends on different countries. There's definitely different entitlements. So this is where, if you are from, offshore, you probably need to think about, look at the local legislative requirements. But I think, coming back to that principle around it's got to work for both parties, if you approach it from that way, and then it's almost like doing a business case, around how you can make it work, and then set up a trial period to put it into action and then revisit it and still continue to work on how it could work. I think that's probably your best way of approaching it if you're in a place that doesn't, have that, those requirements, or is supported by legislation around flexible working.
Does Circle-In provide any materials for parents who are trying to establish flexible working in their business?
Yes, we also have a heap of free resources on our website as well. So there's templates to request flexible working and things like that, which are on our website, and they're available to everyone.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So Jody and Kate, if you can go to the Q&A box, I'm sure you can see the questions in there, hopefully. If there's anything that jumps out, feel free to answer that straight away. Otherwise, I'll just select some questions. Here's one from an anonymous person. Our MD feels that as we pay for an office space, we should use it and not work from home. How would you turn him around to try and offer flexibility to all employees, obviously after lockdown? We've probably covered some of that, but maybe there's anything else you'd add?
I think I was just going to say, I think the general theme we're saying is approach everything like with a business case, like what's the outcome you're trying to achieve here? How can you prove it? So do a trial. So again, think about some questions. We often say, a quick piece of research. It's so easy to get out. Ask your employees a series of questions, ask them again in 3 months, and you've got data, you've got insights to prove how people are feeling and how they feel about being in an office space versus working from home.
Yeah, it sounds like this person's MD's approaching things from a cost perspective. It's costing them a lot of money to have an office, for example, so people should use it and things like that. So I think the thing is, like, there's still, I think to have a place where people can come together as well as, work outside the office, I think is so maybe it's a negotiation around the certain days you come in and certain days work from home, and then trial that. It's good.
There's one, Ben, around parents often managers. How do they work with their teams in developing juniors who perhaps work less flexibly? I'd say that's exactly Kate and I. So we're leaders of a company. A lot of our team, don't have children. They're working more of a traditional kind of structure. I think the important thing is role modeling, and we never lose sight of, we're not afraid to walk the talk, demonstrate that, we do work flexibly. We're proud of it. We own it, but we don't, enforce those hours on others. It's up to them as to kind of what hours that they're working. But role modeling is really important. I think that goes across, for everyone on this call, your leaders, make sure they're role modeling support for parents, and showing that empathy and doing the right thing.
Great. There's another good question here from Gabrielle. You mentioned earlier that the current state of working full-time at home with children home from school and is unsustainable. What responsibility does an employer have to avoid employee burnout?
I think employees have quite a big responsibility here around the overall well-being of their people, and this comes back to the empathy piece. When if it's as a parent and they've what's happened in Melbourne, for example, is you were homeschooling and now you can't take your kids to childcare as well. So parents who are already struggling with small children, in the younger years of primary school, have now got a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old who's home from childcare or to juggle as well. And, everyone who's had a really small child knows you can't get work done in that situation, or you can't work in the same way that you have. So I think there is a big onus on employers to be empathetic, to understand individual circumstances. And then I think, you need to look at the work and how it's been done, and is that actually sustainable in the short term? I mean, it won't go on forever. It feels like it at the moment. This is a point in time, and we just need to combine, be supportive, and look after our parents, particularly those with really younger kids, who are trying to juggle so many things at the moment. And I think, some of the things that we've put into place with our team around half-day wellness, day on a Friday, no Zooms on, one day of the week or whatever it is. But, there's some good examples sort of floating around that you can see. But, it's important to, look after your people, because when, you don't want to burn people out and you don't want people to drop out of the workforce, you want to help them stay in the workforce and support them. And, when this does change and we do get a more stable working rhythm going again, where kids are back at school and at childcare and things, your parents are going to be so grateful for that support that you showed them, and they will talk about it with all their friends, and your workplace will be seen as a family first workplace that really genuinely supports their people, and it will pay dividends in the long run.
I think one of the simplest things that people can do is ask that question, ask a parent if they're okay. And we ran that campaign last year, and we'll be launching it again next week in the lead up to Are You OK Day. It's such a simple question, but it's so powerful and can really enable such a deeper conversation with a parent to uncover actually how they're feeling.
There's a fairly specific question here from Jenny Lee. Are you able to share any insights or experiences of what flexibility looks like for working parents in an industry where a contractual obligation is a face-to-face customer service bound by scheduled appointments, or how your platform could help leaders working within that type of industry?
I guess one that we've seen work before is job sharing. So when you do have, potentially set hours or customer facing, to look at job sharing arrangements, and we've seen them work brilliantly if they're set up right from the beginning. So I think there's lots of different ways, and Kate spoke about the fact that flexible working isn't just hours, it's the way you look at roles. So job sharing, condensed weeks, whatever it may be. So, but I think in that situation where you do have that customer facing, to look at is that an option to job share a role potentially?
You said there, if it's set up correctly from the beginning, is there any tips on job sharing and how to get it right?
Yes, I think we've got an article on our website about job sharing, but I mean, we could spend a whole webinar on it, but it's about culturally bringing the right two people together, but really setting clear expectations of how they're going to work together, what that overlap looks like, how they'll work with the team. So it's almost like putting a role description on steroids and being really clear around, you know, what are the expectations and what's the role looking to achieve? How do they want to work? You know, what's their way of working?
Yeah. There's one here from Vlad, which is a good question. Have you previously run any financial analysis to demonstrate the commercial benefits of flexible working? If yes, are you able to share how it was quantified?
We'd love to. We're big on data, and we're certainly, you know, looking towards being able to build the business model for both flexibility and also productivity from a return to work perspective from employees. So watch this space. I think what we can demonstrate is when you put the right support in place for parents, they're more engaged, they're happier, and they're more likely to advocate for your company. So we've certainly got that data, and we can share that with you if it's of interest.
Yep. Well, here's a good one. This is a layup. Does Circle In partner with Employment Hero for employee benefits?
I read it and I was like, yes, it's coming.
We aren't yet, but we will. I think the key difference that we've found so far is that we've got a lot to learn from Circle In, and we're very keen to partner. Our Employment Hero's typical customer is about 35 employees, 40 employees. So at the middle mid-market, whereas Circle In has found a great fit with large corporates who really need to do this well at scale and multinational companies like that. That doesn't mean to say we can't find a great fit with our customers as well. We're all trying to figure out how to do this well. So stay tuned, and you'll see more.
Perfect. I've just put the wrong
I was going to say, you've typed in your own.
There we go. So the website for our resources, so it's just circlein.com.
Yeah, and look, we'll follow up with a copy of this webinar, a recording of this webinar, plus links to a lot of content that Circle In have been very generous and shared with us for our user base, and any other things that have come up during the webinar that we can answer post webinar. We'll do that as well. Any last minute questions that you see there that you'd like to answer?
No questions, but one of the things that I would like to point out, and again, it's a really practical thing if people are looking for those, you know, quick wins that you can take back to your business. It's the power of moving the conversation from working mothers to working parents. Again, that one change in a word can have such a huge impact on your organization. So to think about your parents as not working mothers, but as working parents. So just even in your everyday internal comms, just that language. And then further to that, you know, is there an opportunity to bring storytelling to life? There's such a power in telling stories of people that are at home and how they're working flexibly or how they're managing the juggle. It's storytelling that drives cultural change and inspires others. So think about how you can embed that, and it's something we do. We love partnering with our organisations to tell their stories. So more than happy to talk to you about what that could look like.
Great. Well, thank you, Kate and Jody, for giving us your time and your knowledge. We are very privileged, and I'm just so incredibly proud to see that you've taken what started as a problem and you've turned it into a global opportunity, and you're having a really important impact on the world of work and the future of work, which aligns brilliantly with Employment Hero's mission to make employment easier and more rewarding for everybody. So I look forward to continuing to work with you and watching the success of Circle In. And yeah, thank you again for your time.
Thanks so much, Ben. It's been a great opportunity, and I nearly recruited another one for the webinar as well.
I saw that.
Keeping it real.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, keeping it real.
Keep on keeping on. Lockdown will be behind us in 6 to 8 weeks, and hopefully we'll get back to the new normal. But
I know.
yeah,
can't
thank
wait
you
for the new
all.
normal.
Thanks,
you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks, Ben.
See you, Ben.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.